we'll become acquainted over time. So in terms of tonight, obviously the talk itself will take about 45 minutes or so. Questions will be done after that. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to pop them in the chat, or if not, then yeah, hold on to them and we can ask them at the end. If you could, in the meantime, just while Stuart's talking and spreading his knowledge, we just get everyone else on mute, and then once we have the questions at the end, we can unmute as and when. But for now, that's it from me. Stu, you ready to rumble?
Yeah, let me just share my screen, make sure all that's working okay. Yeah.
All good.
Cool. Can you see the proper slide?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Good to go. So, firstly, it's great to see Quality Advocates back. It's been a little while, and it's great to be kicking things off again. From my side, I did this talk a week or two ago. It was the first time I gave the talk. I didn't allow them to record it because I didn't want it to be out there too soon. Plus, I didn't want to mess it up, to be fair. But obviously, the guys are recording it this time. So afterwards, they'll share it. And if you have any questions that you kind of think of, if you want to watch it back, then by all means, contact me outside of this group. So just to start with a little bit about me. So I'm currently head of quality at Dunelm. I've got around about 23-ish years in software delivery. I know I probably look older than that, to be fair, but it is the role that I do. I've been agile for over 10 years, and a couple of other bits. You know, I'm very much focused on coaching quality and mentoring into teams and being a servant leader of that. And I do a little bit with co-hosting Ministry of Testing, Essentials, which we kicked off in February, but then we went into a pandemic, believe it or not. So that's kind of not gone anywhere since then, but it will be back. So just to move on. So this talk is all about shifting in all directions. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit around, you know, your boards, how you approach that, your QA columns or test columns, this, that, and the other. But I want to ask and open up with a question for everybody first. And that question is, how many of you are working in teams or with teams that talk about or practice shifting left or right, but still have a team board that looks something similar to this? So anybody have a board that looks similar to that? You have these phases, or maybe you have a board that looks similar to this, with a lovely in progress column and then a test column and then a done column. Anybody got boards that look like that? Shout out now. If not, then I'm going to end the talk because clearly you all know.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do.
Okay, cool.
I used to.
Cool. So just another question then. So, and we'll go into this throughout this talk, and we'll come back to this in particular towards the end. But let me just sort of throw that board up there. Why do you think this could be an issue? So I don't want to go into this too much right now, but what I'm going to just do is I'm just going to lay this image next to that board. Okay. Now, those people that have either practiced agile or worked in a waterfall way, they'll recognize both these types of concepts. So on the right-hand side, you've got a Kanban board, if you like, and on the left-hand side, you've got the waterfall life cycle. Now, when you look at them, you just by looking at them, they're very, very similar. It very much shows you phases. It very much shows you a handoff type mentality to moving things through phases to get them to a done state. Okay. Now, as I say, we're going to come back to this in a little while. let's first of all let's talk a bit more around what shift left or shift right really means, and why should we choose them? Which one should we choose? Or is it even worthwhile in the first place? So let's start with shifting left. Now, some people don't like the term shift left or right. I'm using this term because it's obviously the most common term to be used. But the idea of shifting left is really about looking at quality earlier, as early as you possibly can through your delivery cycle. Okay, so things like quality engineering practices, building quality into what we do, focusing on continuous quality and whole team ownership, continuous collaboration, understanding the product and the product behavior, investing in issue prevention over issue resolution, continuously testing from the start rather than just testing for quality or testing in quality at a later phase. Automation, exploration, a lot of what people start talking about when they start talking about shifting left is that continuous integration, pipeline, deployment type activity. And generally people kind of think of that as shifting left. But also then around continuous feedback. So there's a lot of things, from my perspective, a lot of things that make up the whole shift left movement, if you like. It's not just about, building in a load of automation into your testing. It's not about your pipelines. It starts a lot earlier about that, a lot earlier than that. A lot of it is people really, and how you communicate early on, how you collaborate, how you understand your product from your, understanding your customer and understanding your product, really helps kind of shift left and get into those sort of discussions earlier. Now, if that shift left, okay, so what are the benefits that we see from that? So some of the key benefits we'll see from shifting left. So generally we'll see a reduction in cost. Now, why do we see a reduction in cost? Now, we start seeing a reduction in cost because we start building a common understanding of what it is we're trying to deliver to our customer. We get a common understanding of our customer. So we have a much better feel for, is this the right thing that we're trying to deliver? A lot of the time we focus very much on, does this thing that we're trying to deliver meet the requirements that have been laid out? Without really thinking about, actually, are these requirements meeting what our customer needs and our customer wants? So we try and build a much more common understanding through earlier collaboration and techniques like that, such as BDD, for example, having those discussions and coming to a common language that we use. Focusing on issue prevention. So again, that obviously helps us reduce our costs because it helps us reduce those times, those cycle backs that we have to go through if we find an issue later in the day. And we've all seen the cost of defects over time graph that is well out there. But it's very much around by focusing on how we prevent issues, and a lot of issues come from not understanding requirements or missing the idea of what it is we're trying to achieve. We can prevent a lot of those things from happening early on. And for every time that we test throughout that process, we can really kind of prevent them. We can find things earlier, we can prevent them earlier. And then that continuous feedback loop. So, collaboration and feeding back all the time is really, really key. Now, higher productivity. So what does higher productivity mean? So higher productivity comes from the collaboration side of it. Okay, so we're talking all the time, we're talking early. And again, we're constantly testing the analysis, the designs, those sort of things, and really questioning, is this actually worth doing in the first place? So we're really sort of focusing on building and delivering the right thing rather than just delivering stuff for the sake of it. Techniques like paired coding and paired testing, for example, paired programming, are really great at building productivity. Now, I have a lot of conversations with people about, well, why putting two people on one task, that seems illogical, right? Because two people can do two tasks. But actually, when you put two people on one task, they get through that a lot quicker, and you'll find that they'll do that with a much higher level of quality as well, because you've got different eyes on things. You've got two people working together to question each other and actually help review things as they go. Get higher productivity through the levels of automation, CI/CD, enables you to obviously release quicker to market. So you're able to release quicker, therefore you're able to release more often. But you always should question how fast you really need to go as well. And then again, continuous feedback. So all through this process, there's that continuous feedback loop. Higher quality. So by having the whole team take that ownership, obviously, everybody is thinking about quality the whole time. From the very, very start, how do we embed quality into what we do? So that's that real, as far left as you can possibly go. So the earliest you can start thinking about building quality into your product, okay? Continuous quality and testing. So testing at every single phase, every single step of the way that you can test. We're not just talking about testing the software, we're talking about testing the idea, testing the conversations you're having, and just really kind of verify, is this really right? Is this the right thing to do? And, getting that understanding around that. And that ultimately helps you start building continuous quality in, because you're measuring the level of quality that you're doing as you go and building it in. Improve product understanding. So again, by understanding our product better, understanding what it is, exploring that product more, we're able to, obviously improve the product and from the understanding we have of the product. And then again, continuous feedback. You'll see a common theme with the continuous feedback. And then competitor advantage. So being able to deliver, this one kind of speaks for itself a little bit, but being able to deliver higher quality customer value, obviously is over your competitors that aren't doing that is always going to, be an advantage to you. But being able to deliver more frequently, again, that's going to be an advantage because you're able to pivot really, really quickly. One thing that we've done at Dunelm, or we've really seen through this pandemic, is our ability to pivot and redeliver and change things really quickly and get value out to our customer quickly and experiment with that. Again, being able to do that at faster speeds. And that's not just throwing stuff over the fence because we can really, really quickly. We're doing it with a level of quality in mind as well. So obviously, you start from that point and then you build that speed in. And then continuous feedback again. So that's the benefits of shift left. So let's just touch on what shift right means. Okay, so shifting right for me is very much around, within our production environments, what can we do? What can we learn? What can we test? What can we observe? What can we experiment with? Okay, so we shouldn't be scared to test in production. Okay, now some people will go, well, testing in production is way too late. You should never test in production. Yeah, and to a point they're right, because you don't want to be not testing before production, but there's no reason you can't continue to test in your production environment. So for example, we load test our Dunelm.com platform in production. We will absolutely hammer it in production. We try and break it in production, right? Because what that helps us to do is, A, it helps us define whether our monitoring is correct, the stability of our platform, and how quickly, if we need to, can we resolve a problem. So it enables us to test so many different aspects of A, the product, A, our platform, A, our response time, and our processes that we have in place to support those things. We have looking at having continuous testing through synthetic tests as well, that are constantly monitoring the journeys that your customers do. Thinking about how you can do canary releases and releasing to a small proportion of your customer base. So you're testing throughout your process from your shift left processes and mindsets and so on. But even then, when you come into production, you can continue testing to define, is this the right thing? Have we delivered something that our customers really want? And you can do that by releasing it to a smaller proportion of your customer base and get feedback really quickly. And you can fix stuff really quickly through that as well, because obviously it feeds back through the what we've just spoken about. So for example, we've done this recently with our new checkout API, our new checkout feature. So we released that to 1% of our customers, got some feedback, found a couple of little issues, released it to 10%, got some feedback, and we were able to roll these things back really easy. So we do that through a tool called Fastly, for example. So that's our CDM provider. So we're able to kind of test in production without really affecting our customers, because we're able to switch really quickly backwards and forwards. So we shouldn't be scared to do those things if you've got the right technologies in place, but not just the technologies, the mindsets to do it as well. Observation, monitoring, look at how our customers are using our platform, our products, really understand them through the tools that you can do. So obviously Google Analytics is a great tool, real user monitoring. We utilize another monitoring tool called Datadog, which is really great. And it just gives us an idea of what our customers are doing and how we may need to adapt and feed that stuff back in, again, to when, to the far left. All that knowledge that we're gaining, we can utilize that on the left-hand side. And experimentation. So using A/B testing, for example. So we use a tool called Monotate that enables us to experiment with our customers, different features. So for example, you might hit the website, you might see a button that is this color. I might hit it, I might see a button that is a different color. And actually we can gauge which one is much more better received by the customer, and therefore is it going to drive conversion higher and stuff like that. But these are all different tests that we do in the production environment. So we are actually utilizing that environment to gain knowledge, to build knowledge, to also feed that back in. And then the other thing again is that continuous collaboration. So shifting right doesn't mean it's in production and therefore it's somebody else's problem. Okay, shifting right is very much it's in production. How can we work with the teams that own and support the environments and the applications once in production, and work more collaboratively from our engineering perspective and our testing perspective as a team to continuously do that stuff. So this isn't a handing over thing. This is a continuous feedback, continuous collaboration thing again. So what are the benefits then? And I've kind of touched on some of them, but the continuous learning piece for me really around the shift right is really, really important. The richness of information you can gain from testing in your production environment is great, right? So through the A/B experimentations, through feature toggling and canary releases, all these things help you support, is this the right thing? Have we delivered the right thing? How do we ensure that we can test stuff but without hurting our customers or without damaging our reputation? And really using the analytics to enable us to do that. But also continuing to collaborate, continuing to feedback, continuing to have those discussions, and not, the days of, oh, we need to put this into early life support, it's somebody else's problem. But if you have a problem, let me know and I'll try and fix it. No, we continuously talk. It's actually our teams that will monitor stuff that go into production alongside our platform engineering team, for example, and our site reliability engineers. This ultimately gives us more confidence as well. So if we're able to understand that our customers are really benefiting, or they seem to be benefiting from what we're deploying and what we're delivering, that gives us more confidence that we're doing stuff correctly. So, and also using things like synthetic testing, the performance side, continuously building that confidence from that environment, from production. It also helps increase the customer satisfaction, right? So again, by us understanding our customers through that analytics and observation, we're able to feed all that back in, right? So we're able to take that and understand, exactly what our customers are doing, what they need, what their behaviors are like, what might not be working so well. And we take that feedback from our customers as well. So we'll look at feedback that we get, and obviously use that as an example of, well, maybe we didn't quite get this right. But we don't take huge amounts of time to rectify those things, right? So we're able to deliver high quality customer support. So we're able to fix stuff quickly. And then that's something that's really key around, learning from the shift right side of things, that you're able to take that and feed it back in really quickly and learn from it. And then again, from the competitive advantage, is basically the same as what I was saying before, right? So again, the higher quality customer value, high frequency, faster speeds, all these things, flow through into our production and within our production environments, when we do these things. So that's something to think about as well. Okay. So shifting left and right then. I'm just gonna have a quick drink, sorry. So how does it come together? So generally when we talk about shift left, shift right, shift in all directions, right? We start saying the first thoughts that generally come to mind are the DevOps infinity loop. Yeah, so the plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor, and that continuous cycle. And then when we talk about that, we also then talk about tools and generally automation. So, these are the sorts of tools that we'll use within a DevOps environment, and we have to build all this through automation and so on and so on. But for me, it's much more than that, right? That is part of this movement. That is part of this discussion. But for me, it's much more than that. For me, it's a continuous loop of collaboration, testing, and feedback. Okay, and I'd much prefer to look at it in this way. So, as you'll all have seen Dan Ashby's visual around where do you test in the DevOps cycle, and you test everywhere. That's your continuous testing. We don't often talk very much about continuous collaboration, right? So it always still feels like, yes, we're testing everywhere, but who's actually owning these things? Where are these conversations happening? Who and where are there handoffs, or is this more of a collaborative approach to things? And so for me, the collaboration is really, really important between those people. And I don't know if you can see my arrow here or not, but obviously, we talk about the teams don't change, right? So just because something's gone into the production doesn't mean those people change, right? You want those people to take responsibility for what they've delivered and learn from that and use that knowledge and learnings to feed back into their cycle. Now, some people say, well, isn't shift right really also a form of shifting left? Well, when you look at this, there is no shift left or right. It's just a continuation of this process. Yeah, and so it's not a left and right thing. It's actually, all directions we're traveling and making this stuff happen. And for me, it's very much DevOps DevOps itself is all about culture. Yeah, and it is very much a mindset thing. It's very much a people thing. Often, as I said, we talk about DevOps, we talk about tools, we talk about automation, but unless you've got the mindset of understanding why you do those things and where that all fits in, the culture of DevOps gets lost, and that's challenge, right? So you'll often hear, we've got DevOps, we've got DevSecOps, we've got DevTestOps, we've got, I don't know what the latest one is. I think somebody on the call the other day was saying that they saw an advertisement for a Dev and Ops engineer, right? And I don't know, but does it really matter? It's about the culture that you have to kind of bring together to enable these things to happen. Okay, so you can kind of overlay the DevOps model there onto this model on the right, and that's where you really get the whole continuous loop of collaboration, testing, and feedback. So I'm going to come back to this now. So I'm going to come back to what we were talking about earlier. So based on what I've just been talking about, I want to bring this question back to you guys, okay? And we talk about we express what the Kanban board with its development, test, deploy, done model, and then we also looked at the waterfall cycle there. So based on what I've just been sort of talking about there, has anybody got any kind of ideas why you think having a board and working in the way that this Kanban board prescribes can be an issue with your teams? Anyone got any ideas?
Miscommunication.
Yeah, miscommunication. I think for me as well, whilst you might be sort of say for example, you've got your Scrum teams and you're working quite what you might find is collaborative, it does create a mindset of invisible walls and handoffs, yeah, which is essentially what we try and get away from with the waterfall type approach. You know, we don't want to be in this position where, you know, we've got our test phase, our development phase, our deploy phase, and we don't want our roles to really, the roles within the teams to really be, pigeonholed into those verticals either. And a lot of the times, so the teams that I've worked with in the past that have kind of been, yeah, I've got a ticket in development, it's ready for test, I'll move it over to the test column. It's not my problem anymore, right? It's somebody else's problem in the team. Even though they're a small team, it's still somebody else's problem. And even the best teams in the world where they collaborate really well, the visualization of having a board of this nature really kind of plays on people's minds that, that's now somebody else's problem, or I've done my bit, here you go. It's very rare you'll go, as a developer, right, okay, so I'm going to develop this, and then we've got to, okay, so I'm going to move a ticket, and then I'm going to do some testing, and then I'm going to collaborate with somebody else, come and pair with me, and we'll do some more testing. And then it's very rare you'll see that type of activity, that type of mentality. So what it kind of does is it can adversely impact people's understanding and mindset and culture, and actually force you away from what we've just been talking about around that shift left, shift right type approach, that whole continuous collaboration, continuous testing, continuous loop and feedback. And you kind of end up in a bit of a handoff type position. So I actively encourage all our teams to not have columns such as this on their boards. You know, if you really want to drive discussion, you really want to drive collaboration, take the visual away and help and engage people to talk more. Yeah, and they have to engage with people, because if you want to know where, the status of a ticket, I need to speak to somebody. It's really, really, especially now, right, when we're all remote, it's very, very easy to go, oh, God, just go and have a look at the Jira board. You know where that, you know where that ticket is, yeah? Just go and have a look at the Jira board. And it's the same thing with raising bugs. You know, I've mentioned on a few of my talks, I actively encourage not to raise defects in Jira or whatever, in any defect management tool. Have a conversation. Put the effort in up front to really collaborate on your stories, understand your what it is you're trying to deliver. Really, really invest in your stories and the scenarios within your stories, so that they're so good, so understood, that if something's not working, you just need to talk back to the story and say, this isn't working, right? We've already described how it should work. It's not working. Therefore, let's fix it. And we'll move away. And you actually do that as a pair rather than creating a ticket, handing it off to somebody, so on and so on. But for me, it's, having this type of approach, having these boards like this, it promotes that testing and quality is a phase in your delivery. Okay, it's still, we talk about continuous testing, we talk about shifting left, and then you've got this phase that is there for everybody to see, and it's really easy to people to slip into that trap that, well, this is where we do all our testing, right? But what does that mean? And then it brings that encouragement of handoffs and silos within teams. So I've seen it, again, with teams where they've just gone, oh, it's with the QAs. Well, okay, but why is it with the QAs when we're talking about, and these are teams that are actively wanting to practice, this way of working and this way of thinking. It just kind of drives that behavior. Whereas you want to drive the behavior of continuous collaboration, and actually you want to encourage those conversations and hold team ownership. So again, you kind of get yourself into that position where you've got these verticals and it's somebody else's problem, or it's somebody else's task to do this. It puts focus on issue detection and safety nets as well. So again, it kind of drives that mentality that I don't need to worry too much about it now because somebody will find it later, right? And actually what we want to be doing is thinking about, well, we don't want to find issues later. We want to prevent them and keep talking and keep having continuous feedback loops. So again, that it kind of can drive that sort of behavior as well. And then it also encourages that phased delivery. And this is this for me again is where you'll find, how many tickets have we got in test? How many tickets have we got in development? Well, does it really matter because they're all in progress, right? I mean, that was kind of the example that I showed at the start. There was a board that said in progress and then in test. Now, is being in test not in progress? I don't know, right? And that's the kind of divide it can create. And you just need to think about how this kind of reflects to your team, especially if your team maybe is stepping into this world and you're trying to get them to collaborate more, you're trying to get them to remove silos, you're trying to get them to be more T-shaped and cross-functional. You want to try and just bring them together with a common purpose of getting something done. Yeah, and moving a ticket from one column to the other is a simulation of progress, but only progress from a ticket moving across the board. It doesn't show you the progress your team is making in terms of how they're maturing, how they're improving their practices and all that kind of stuff. So just be mindful of those kind of things. Now, I'm not saying that you can do this and change this stuff overnight. This isn't something that happens overnight, and there may be reason why you have to have boards like this. I'm just trying to highlight some of the challenges it can create and the mindset it can implement. So what can be done differently? Okay, so for me, you just need to build a common understanding. So again, we talk about shift left, we talk about shift right, we talk about DevOps, we talk about all those sorts of things. But firstly, what's in a name? So as I mentioned earlier, so we might say about DevOps, we might talk about DevSecOps, DevTestOps, whatever, I don't know. But you need to have that common understanding of what it is you're trying to do. And a lot of, you talk about, we talk about shift left, a lot of people think that is about continuous our delivery pipelines, CI/CD and just automation within there. It's so much more than that, so much more than that. And actually, that's just a very small part. There's a whole lot you can be doing before you even get to that point, to go further left. And the same from a shift in right perspective. So you really need to understand and build that common understanding within your teams. What does it really mean? What is it you're really trying to achieve? So you might be using this terminology, but what is it you're really trying to achieve? And from that, obviously you can talk about the benefits that you might gain and you may achieve, and which ones may be more rewarding, more beneficial to you as an organization, to you as a team. Yeah, what is the benefit for you to invest in doing this? What is the benefit of you investing, moving right, left, or whichever direction? And I think once you've kind of come to that understanding, it's much easier to then talk about, okay, so how do we visualize this? How do we set ourselves up for success? And then you can start thinking about removing that visualization of these are the phases we need to go through. And it actually becomes a continuous in progress loop of, you know, discovery, continuous testing, you know, collaboration, feedback, and so on. But without that common understanding, without that real kind of thought about how you would do this in your teams and what it really means, it's very difficult to kind of get teams out of that mindset of, we need to know where something is. Okay, and I know even like if you're you're working Scrum, you have your sprint cycles, you know, there's this real feeling of, I need to know where all the tickets are at any one point in a sprint, right? So I need to know how many we still got to finish testing, how many we still need to finish developing. But for me, it's just a ticket is in progress. The team is working on that ticket, and it's done when it is done. Now, what does done mean? So for me, we just need to keep things simple. So having a real simple board really drives better conversations, you know. So you have your daily stand-ups, you have your regular check-ins with people. Use that as a forum to discuss, right? Use that as a forum to determine, you know, does somebody need a hand with something? If we're testing something, can you pair up? Can you pair up with your engineers? Can you pair up with, you know, your engineers pair up with you to test? Can you pair up with the other QAs and whatever? Just have those conversations. It drives those conversations rather than standing there looking at a board going, do you know what? I already know where that is, and I know you've got it in hand because that's you in that test column there, and it just drives better conversations. Excuse me. And then think about things like, rather than having your columns, think about things like definitions of ready. So when is something ready to start work on? So when will you start developing it, for example? You know, what is it that needs to happen? You know, how refined does that need to be? How much understanding do we need? What are the artifacts within there that we need? You know, it might be that your acceptance criteria or scenarios or whatever that is. Those things play into your definitions of ready to actually pick a story up, pick a feature up. And then think about your definitions of done. If you have a definition of done, again, you don't really need all these, because basically what you're showing on a board with all these columns is, these are the steps I need to get get it to done. But if you can articulate that and agree that within the team, you already have that defined in a common understanding, and therefore you don't, again, need to have this mentality of these handoffs. If you're using Kanban, you know, make sure that you've got policies in place. You know, what does a policy mean? So a policy, I'm going to hold my hand up. I'm not a huge fan of Kanban because some of the ways of working in that just you can lead you to having loads and loads of columns on a board, so you can manage and monitor your workflow and where you've got problems and stuff like that. I like to keep things simple, and then if we start having a problem, we introduce, you know, say for example, we might introduce the test column back to see, is this where things are stacking up? Once we identify that, we remove it and we just improve and continue to work in the simplistic form again. Use it as a means to identify where you've got bottlenecks rather than keeping that in one place all the time. But again, you know, policies enable you to determine how does something move from one phase to the next. And in this simple model, you'd have a policy between to do and doing, and a policy between doing and done. And then also think about your WIP limits if you are working in Kanban. So often teams that work Kanban don't have WIP limits, or they do have WIP limits, but they just ignore them. Now, WIP limits, again, can be a real good identification of where you may need to pair more, where you may need to mob and come together collaboratively to do, you know, to work on a ticket. So think about those things. You know, I mean, I joined a stand-up with one of our teams the other day, just because I randomly do it. And they had 2 columns on their board that were both red on their WIP limits. And I'm like, I did ask, can I ask a question? And I just asked, you know, is there a reason why we're seeing this? Or is there anything you guys are working on actively to do that? And they were like, oh no, it's always like that. It's fine. No, we just carry on. even just having the columns there just drives the wrong type of mentality, because they feel as though it's not their problem. The WIP limit in the dev column is my problem because I'm a developer. The WIP limit in the test or QA column is the QA's problem, and we'll sort it out between us, but that's fine. Yeah. So it just drives a real disconnect, I think. And then just building that collaboration, communication to really, what your board does, just talk about it. Just, you don't need to visually have it there in these breakdowns with these invisible walls, these handoffs. Just talk, collaborate, use it as a means, use a simple board and a simple approach to drive your conversation. And it gives you a reason to have conversations as well. And don't think of quality as a phase, right? So across your entire delivery, as I described, everything that we do through those through that approach is really to build, measure, and enable quality end to end. Okay, measuring quality in production, and then feeding back our learnings into our left so we can build quality back in and measure it as we go, and those kind of things. This is why, again, having a separate column for testing and testing quality in just never sit comfortably with me. But it's just something these are almost my ideas. These are just kind of things that I've picked up along the way over the years. And every team is different. Every team works differently. I'm not saying all teams have these invisible walls. They may collaborate really well, even though they've got boards that look like this. It's just stuff to think about when you're talking to your teams and trying to get them to collaborate more. Think about the whole continuous cycle of feedback, collaboration, testing, all those things. It may just be a little bit harder for them to understand if visually they've got this breakdown of handoffs and ways of getting stuff done. So that's it, really. Hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully it might have sparked some ideas. I'm pretty sure I've probably said some controversial stuff that people may not like either. But I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing. And there's a lot in the chat. I've avoided the chat completely. So Marco, are you going to be my question master of the chat? Is there anything in there that's actually a question or?
Yeah, we have one main question that I mean the rest were kind of comments, and actually I think a lot of it you actually touched on over time throughout the talk, which is obviously promising. The one question was how can you make sure that in the end QA is being involved in other activities, for example kickoff, grooming, design review, and so on?
So I think this is always a really interesting one. We did we've had a quality chapter gathering over the last couple of days at Dunelm, and we were talking about this around how do we encourage earlier involvement. Now, some of our teams just nail it. They understand they need people, they need the quality advocates in those conversations. Others are still kind of on that journey. But I think what you need to do is really kind of encourage your quality narrative within your organization to understand what the QAs are there for and how much benefit they can bring early and why it's really important. Because quality doesn't start at the point you start testing some software, right? Identifying risk early on through a conversation around, this is an idea we've got, and we think this is a great idea. Having people, of the whole team, members of the whole team in those discussions is really great, because you can really quickly understand and start questioning, is this a really good idea? You might think it is, but from what I've seen, from some of the stuff I've known from a customer perspective as a QA, I don't think that's probably the right thing to do. There might be a better way for us to approach it. So it's really about building awareness within your wider organization around what your roles are and the quality side of things. A lot of the misconceptions is just that it's about the testing. yeah, and testing quality in later. And I think that's where you need to kind of spend the time. So, you know, we're trying to build a quality of, like, a culture of quality through quality narratives, you know, where everything, we're an umbrella across our delivery rather than just being a phase in that delivery. So that's kind of what you really try and need to do. And also just go, can I come to the meeting? Right? Just ask. Why not? Right? If you don't feel empowered to do that, then that's a different challenge within your organization. But just say, guys, can I come along? You know, I think I need to be involved. Just, can I come along?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, apologies, that question was from Taurus. Did that answer your question, Taurus?
Yes, partially. I mean, I'm more interested about that part where you mentioned that part of your teams are in transition. So we're probably one of those teams in transition, but having some, I don't know, maybe mindset issues where some people want to transition and some don't. So that would be another question. How can you shape that mindset so that all team would be interested in quality or feel responsible for quality?
So I think there needs. I mean, I don't know what the sort of the team setup is for us in terms of, you know, your organization, but I think this is where you need to kind of find those people that are interested and leverage them, you know, whether it be your engineers within the teams, whether it be your product owner, whether it be, you know, other QAs. There's always, you know, you'll always find somebody generally that will want to do it. And then sometimes it's just about experimentation as well. You know, just trying to convince the team, you know, let's try this, right? So have a conversation with your scrum master, or depending on how your team's set up, you know, I don't know, but have, you know, just think about some experimentation within the team. You know, let's just try this and see what happens, and then just encourage, you know, and also talk more around, again, that quality narrative about what quality is, and why it's important that the whole team owns it and is involved in it. It's not one person, single person's responsibility.
Can I say something to add to that, Stu?
Of course you can. Yeah.
So something that I've tried in my last job and my current one. So we kind of run an experiment, and we just have like one scrum team, and we try and speak to the stakeholders and try and, you know, tell everybody what the benefits we think are going to be. And so currently, the company I'm working at now, we have one team where we're trying to do the shift left. So we have somebody in my team who works with the PO really early on to understand what the requirements are going to be. So then when it goes into development, they can have informal demos with the developer on the code that they've written, so that we have kind of early visibility of what they've developed, and also we can kind of say, yes, that meets requirements, no, it doesn't meet the requirements, and whether or not we find any defects early on before pushing that code into the next environment. So that's kind of one of the ways that we've tried to sort of shift left. And then we don't log those defects, we just communicate these defects, and then the developer goes and rectifies them, and then we have another informal demo. But that's kind of one way that we've tried to shift left, and then kind of document in the experiment, so that if it's successful, you kind of get more stakeholders on board to kind of show the benefits to roll it out. That's all I just wanted to, as an example of what we've tried to do, or how you could potentially go about doing it to get people on board.
Yeah, it's a great example. Taurus, does that help answer your question? It's a difficult one when not quite 100% on how your team's set up, but I happily, you know, continue the conversation after, you know, if you want to talk around a bit more.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So we've got a couple of others going on. So how do you influence this when you're a tester and not the PM? You're asking for a change in how the company operate. How do you approach this? Mike, do you want to just elaborate that on a little bit more for me?
Okay, so companies quite often have processes and how they want to work or how they think they want to work. Maybe it's not the most effective way. And we're coming in with the Stuart Day methodology. No, thanks for the talk. And they're valuable suggestions, but we're trying to move an oil tanker rather than just maybe we can say, developer, let's work together and define this together. Maybe we'll go a little bit further than the original requirements. But if you're going, okay, project manager, business analyst, developer, tester, and you're basically trying to move a whole team, and then you're going, oh, this is a good methodology for the whole company to work. And really, some people go, oh, you're just a tester, we don't have to listen to you. And you're trying to make a company work more efficiently, and you might not command the respect of the company to change how they work.
Yeah. So I think some of this comes down to, so for example, we were in a similar position. I've been in a similar position in a number of companies, right? It's quite a common thing. And this is where the culture of the organization comes to play, and also the leadership within that. And the direction of travel they want to take or feel as though that they want to take. Now, we've been on quite a long journey over the last couple of years at Dunelm to shift some of that types of mentality, and we're in a much better place, but there's still pockets of that kind of, the QAs are just the QAs, and they do the testing and that's it. And we're actively trying to change that by demonstrating. We've had external speakers come in. We've spoken to other organizations where they're doing this kind of stuff successfully, and talked to them about how the journeys they've been on, and where we can improve, and just to try and kind of get those thought leaders within the organization thinking slightly differently, and then coming back to that experimentation. Start small, try and experiment this with one team, see how you can, this isn't something that you can change overnight, like as Gillian has mentioned, right? So they're experimenting and going to take that back and see how it goes. It's a case of trying to figure out the direction that you want to go, and trying to experiment towards that. But as I say, you use other organizations, ask them to, if you know anybody, that would kind of come in, speak to the company, just leverage different opportunities out there to try and just get that information into the organization that may just have closed doors saying, this is how we've done it, this is how we always do it. And you just need that in, really. Sometimes it's not an easy thing, but that's where you kind of got to leverage something else.
Cool. We'll start within your team and build it outwards. If it works, people will take it on. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of how we do things iteratively, right? Start small, inspect, adapt. Has it worked? Yes, no. Don't burn too much effort, don't burn too much time, don't burn too much money. And then if you think it's working, you encourage, demonstrate, and after a while people will be like, oh, do you know what, I want a bit of that, that looks really good, and so on and so on. So, but it's not, as I say, it does take time.
Thanks.
So if I did not have a separate QA column and have a stand up in the morning and told there are 20 tickets in the to-do column that need QA attention, how am I supposed to remember which tickets need testing? So firstly, I think if you've got things in the to-do column, well, so let's put it this way. If they're in progress, then they're of a status of some sort. Yeah. So anything that's in to-do hasn't even been started yet. Right. So if they're in an in progress column, they're in a status of some sort. And, I think if depending on the size of your team, having 20 tickets to pick up is going to be a challenge for anybody anyway. But I think you'd need to be talking to the team and saying, guys, why have we got this many tickets? How can we pair on this stuff? Who can help me? Why do we keep developing stuff when we haven't finished stuff, right? And you need to start talking about getting stuff finished before you start doing new things. Yeah, start finishing rather than starting. And that's quite a difficult thing for people to acknowledge. But if it's around remembering which tickets need testing, I mean, I think again, you've got opportunities where you can have avatars or statuses of a ticket, but it doesn't, just because this ticket's in a status doesn't mean that it's all on your shoulders to do it, which is kind of the thing that, the handoffs create. Again, it's difficult not knowing the size of your teams, how you work. But for me, it's if you've got that many tickets, then you should be having a conversation around, who's doing it, how can you help, how can we pair up, how can we get this stuff through to done, why have we got so many tickets in progress, why aren't we finishing them first? Getting that golden thread of quality throughout the whole of the product development is the issue. Any hints or tips in being able to show this value to other managers to get this buy-in? Can you just elaborate on that one a little bit more?
Hi, Stuart. I think you've kind of covered it in your sort of answers to the previous questions, because essentially there are instances, as you say, we've always done it like this. This is how we're going to keep doing it. And it's getting those champions, those sort of, what are they called? Those advocates that aren't within QA, because we're all in QA. You're preaching to the converted. It's trying to grow it out and go, guys, do you want some of this? Because actually we can go left, we can go right, and you've kind of covered that. So thanks.
Okay, cool. Is that you just helping out, Oleg?
Yeah, I had sort of a quick question / maybe a suggestion for a future or part 2 talk. So I've been on both sides. First of all, thanks for the talk. It was amazing, really useful. I was on both sides of this sort of situation. So in my previous job, I tried to remove the QA column, not even a test column, which was even worse. But there was a lot of cost to that. It was cultural cost, it was mental, physical, everything, like technical as well. What would be interesting to hear, maybe in the second talk, is how did you go about introducing? What cost was there? Did you need to hire more people? Did you need to upskill people? Did you have to introduce tools or remove tools? What sort of mentality shift did you do? Were there habits that you had to break or rebuild? All this stuff is really interesting. And at which point of return of investment did you know you were getting that stuff back, and if it was measurable? That would be like super awesome if you sell that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do a follow-up on this with that kind of detailing. I mean, there's a lot of questions in there, Oleg, so maybe just fire them all across to me so I can make sure that I produce a talk that satisfies your needs and everyone else's. But yeah, I mean, I think there is I think this is why I keep saying about starting small, and just chipping away at some of this. Build that common understanding first. Keep the board the same, but by keeping the board the same, building that common understanding, trying to create a whole team ownership, just shifting mindset slightly, can just make a big difference as well. And then gradually, as you mature more, you can start thinking about, okay, so do we still need these phases? Do we need this? Do we need that? And just chip away at it. But yeah, I'll definitely kind of pull something together in the new year around that and the journey we've kind of been on to achieve it.
Yeah, I'll ping across the questions. Yeah, it's more of just a suggestion / questions, because I'm fortunate enough to be working in a place right now which really does what your suggesting. It's amazing. It's really, really good.
Yeah. And look, not all our teams are as mature as this, right? We've got some really mature teams, others that are on that journey, and some that may never end up getting to the North Star where they want to get to. but I think for me, it's just about understanding where and why you want to get, right? Rather than just chasing something for the sake of chasing it, because it's not always right either, and that's why it's about understanding the benefits that you can gain, where those benefits are applicable to you as an organization, as a team, so on and so on. Whip limit for, okay, Mark, yeah, so there's you said there's 20 devs in your team, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's I guess it's down to the ratio of testers to developers, and
yeah,
I mean, it's great to have discussions at the beginning of the day, but if you've got 10 tickets for yourself and they can be quite involved in testing, there's no, unless you write it down or add a tag or something like that to the ticket, you're never going to remember it. I guess it's different if you've got a small team and you're very collaborative. But one thing that I was wondering about as well is you were suggesting you're having conversations about, I've found in some experiences anyway, that the devs, if you make them context switch out of coding, then it can be quite disruptive to their work. How do you find that?
Yeah, and it is kind of, it can be disruptive, but I think that's where if you're all coming from a common place, as in getting tickets done before they start picking up new ones, quite often, with that handoff mentality, it's like, all right, I've coded what I need to code, here you go away and test it, I'll pick up another ticket in the meantime and start coding. And then if you find issues, you go speak to them. They're like, yeah, I'll get back to you in a minute, I'm busy. Yeah, and it's that kind of mentality. Whereas if you can get to a point where the whole team ownership is, you develop it, you'll pair with your developer to understand what they've done. You start testing it at that point through the conversations, and then you're still working together on it. There's less kind of start, stop, or hand off. I'll start something else. You let me know when you. Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
those things kind of play in hand, and also when you've got a smaller team, a more manageable sized team, it absolutely helps. I mean, rule to thumb, we kind of for what we class as engineers to one quality advocate in the team, right? And that whole team will focus on the quality still, and they'll all chip in on the testing, they'll all so on, and the quality advocate will be there pairing up with the engineers on their code and stuff. So it really does obviously depend on the size of your team. But
yeah, I guess it is down to that ratio. I mean, that example I gave was from a few years ago where I was the only tester in a team of 20 developers, so I just couldn't. I mean, it's not a really manageable situation to be in, but no, I guess
there's still things you can take away from some of the concepts, some of the ideas. Get involved earlier, look at get more common understanding of what it is you're delivering, just collaborate a bit more earlier on. You see what I mean? So there's certain aspects of this you can still do, even if you do still need that kind of visualization because of that type of team setup. Some of the concepts to shift left or right you can still do, if that makes sense. But you'll never probably get to the place where your team is owning quality. It'll still kind of be on your shoulders, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm getting there now. I recently started at a new place ish, and they did hardly any unit testing, so trying to get them to build quality in from the start has been quite challenging, but I'm getting there. But anyway, thank you. It's been a great talk. Thanks. Are we getting this recorded? Because I missed a little bit at the beginning. I was waiting to get in. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Cool. Any more questions? No. Cool. Look, I mean, once the guys share, I'll happily share the slides as well. Generally, you'll know my slides don't mean a lot without the context of the talk going with them, because they're just visualization stuff. But I'll share the slides, and obviously the guys will share the talk. If you have any more questions, then just let me know. You can get me on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever.
Thanks, Stuart. It's been great.
No
Yeah,
worries.
thanks very much, Stu. I think sure everyone will agree it was a great talk, really interesting there. As Stu said, happy for you guys to reach out to him with any other questions. Likewise, if you've got any other questions for myself or Julian, please do feel free to reach out to us over LinkedIn or however you like. In the new year, we've got quite a lot planned. I know I've spoken to a couple of people who are here tonight about some potential exciting new things in the new year, and yeah, there's going to be quite a lot coming on. So yeah, if you have any other ideas or anything that you want to hear about, give us a shout and let us know. We're always keen to hear interesting ideas. We want to try and think a little bit outside the box as well. So anything weird and wonderful, please just throw it our way, and happy to try and accommodate and try and get something cool out there for you guys in the new year. But if there's nothing else to add from anyone else, thank you so much everyone for coming. Hope everyone has a great end to this weird year that we've just had, and yeah, hopefully we can start next year with a bang and slightly more peaceful year. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Catch you later.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good Christmas.
Thanks. Bye,
You
everyone.
too.
Take care.
Bye.